Hello, everybody. Welcome to what is quite a special episode of You're a Good Kid. Today is the midway point of Season 2, and just like last season, we are welcoming a very special guest expert today. Hi, Nick.
Hello.
Tell us who we got the pleasure of speaking with.
Well, I think everyone will have seen the name when they clicked the episode.
Hopefully.
But we have the wonderful Dr. Billy Garvey today. And I do feel like anyone who listens to our show might already be aware of Billy because he's a leading expert in this field, a specialist paediatrician at one of our country's biggest hospitals, and also author and podcaster and just legend. And we were so excited to get him in.
Yep. He's the host of Pop Culture Parenting. It's a podcast I know you listen to regularly.
I do, yeah. He's the expert I go to for parenting guidance, especially raising young boys and learning about the plight of masculinity in today's age. We actually get into that in this chat a bit.
Yes, and I am a huge fan of Billy's as well, mostly for his ability to talk about incredibly complex ideas in an incredibly relatable and understandable and accessible way. It's such a skill.
And yet really evidence-based. He's so careful with the science.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he is. But he also does something that not many professionals do because it's tricky, and that is to give of his own story and to share of his own struggles. And he does that a lot, I think, on today's episode in a way that surprised me, honestly.
Well, it's a really special insight into the man. Yeah, he gave a lot of himself, as you said.
Yeah.
So it's a unique and just an insightful look into what drives him, what he's been through, and gosh, we're excited to share it with everyone.
He's such a special person. But before we get into the episode, Nick, there's something else that we would like to ask of our audience.
That's right. Yeah, we were looking ahead, given we're at the midway point of the season, and we've had some interest from people saying that they would like to share their own stories. And so we thought what a wonderful thing it would be to ask and invite everyone, if they're willing, to share a childhood letter of their own.
So if you've been listening along and been moved like we have by the childhood letters that people have written at the end of each episode, we'd like to give you the opportunity to do the same. So if you want to have a go, it only needs to be a paragraph and perhaps a little bit of context for us. And Nick and I will read those out on our end of season episode when we do our brotherly chat.
Yeah, it'll be so good to hear from the community and to share more stories in this season. So as James said, if you've been moved and you want to contribute, we would love to hear from you. And how can people get in touch?
So if you just want to email your letter to james@you'reagoodkid.com.au, or you can send it to us via Instagram.
So we really hope to hear from many people, and it'll be a special way to finish our season. But without any further delay, let's get into this wonderful episode with Dr. Billy Garvey.
All right, so we're here today with renowned paediatrician Billy Garvey. Billy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I think that's maybe the first time I've been given the title of renowned. But
I think you've earned it.
I'm not sure about that, but I'm not sure I'll ever be.
Oh, look, you definitely are. And you're a very, very busy man, and we're lucky to have this time with you today. You are spreading the message far and wide, Billy.
Trying to, just trying to share, probably similar to you, just trying to share what I know clinically and what seems to help people more broadly than, waiting 3+ years for an appointment to, hear me say this stuff, or the people we trained in it. So, it's been wonderful. But this is wonderful too, just a chance to chat with you both.
I got to say, Billy, I haven't told you this, but I am an avid listener of your podcast. Pop Culture Parenting. So this is one of the best things about having a podcast, getting the opportunity to speak with someone like yourself. I listen to you all the time and benefit greatly from your wisdom. Another thing I've always thought, and it's nice now that you're getting you together, is you've always reminded me of my brother, James, sitting next to me. There's something about your manner, your warmth, and your intellect. And I was like, I think I like listening to Billy because he reminds me of James.
Oh, that's very nice of you.
And now I've got you together. And
that's actually really nice to me because I have often thought quite highly when I've listened to James's stuff and been like, oh man, that's a clinician that's like nailing just how to share this stuff in a way that people don't feel shame, can pick it up, can take it home and use it. So that's a beautiful compliment. And PCP is just probably the same as you guys, a lot of work, but it's this beautiful thing to be a part of.
Isn't it a great privilege, to be able to share the message a bit more broadly and widely? Like there's something clearly, obviously, very powerful about the clinic room and being able to work with families individually. But you do find yourself sharing a similar story with pretty much all of them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the interesting thing. I wonder how you feel about that balance, because I feel like the reach that I have through the podcast and the other work I do with the social enterprise is so much bigger. So I feel a little bit selfish now sitting in clinic, but I just love it so much. Like I think I currently have just shy of 400 active patients, and
Oh, wow.
just that concept of like being a tiny part of all of those kids' lives is just so amazing. And I reckon I'd struggle to give it up of like,
Yeah.
even though I know that I can be more effective maybe in other ways. So I don't know, how do you navigate that, James? Like, do you?
I mean, it's a special
Is that
relationship, though, isn't it? The nature of what the connection you can build with families and with individuals in a clinic room is quite unique and special. So I just see them as two different ways, I guess, of connecting and communicating.
Yeah, and I think they're also, I wonder if you do this, they're kind of like my guiding star a bit for the advocacy work that I do. I'm often thinking about the kids that I'm meeting in clinic and wishing that I got to them earlier, but also like they're kind of my, like my crucible of like, am I staying true to them and all of those kids out there by that engagement and sitting in a room with them and holding space with them and sharing their journey and hearing their story. So I think it is an essential part of what I do, but yeah, it just feels a bit more selfish than there's a lot of selfishness in the podcast and other work that I do, but particularly clinic is quite selfish.
Yeah,
So,
I doubt anybody else would accuse you of that. It sounds like something you're grappling with
yeah,
for
well,
yourself.
well, we'll see how much we get into it, because I think there is something beautiful about those of us that are lucky enough to become trained in the areas we've struggled with. You know, like I think there is an interesting thing. I just always thought it would be hard. Like I've done lots of different jobs, like supermarkets and driving forklifts and being a hospital cleaner and all that stuff, but I've landed somewhere that actually helps me personally. And yeah, that's quite unique, I think. I don't think there's many people that are like, what they do in their job is something that actually helps them personally with their own experience or trauma or whatever it is. So it's it's a really interesting space that I find myself in, and hopefully will be staying in. Sometimes when I think I've stuffed something up, I'll be like, I can always go back to forklift driving.
Well, that's remarkably on point for our stories that we share on our podcast. And you're here as a guest expert today, so we can't wait to dig in on your wisdom. But before we get to that part of our chat, we'd love to go back in time, I think, and hear a bit about your childhood and the genesis of how you became who you are. And I know it's an interesting one, and it's one that you've chosen to share quite openly and you know, with vulnerability. So why don't you take us back, Billy? Tell us a bit about where you come from.
Yeah, so for listeners in Victoria will probably know, I grew up in Frankston. My mum had a really interesting journey of like, she landed very young, left island, 6-week boat trip, that kind of stuff, and had my older brother who's never met his dad. And then, you know, over a decade later had me and my little brother, and then was raising the three of us as a single mum in Frankston. But she worked at Frankston City Council in disability access, and also was a waitress at the RSL, and then did these other jobs, like just worked a lot. She had this thing about like essentially just trying to hold a mortgage she couldn't afford. And so it's funny. I think a lot of the times we don't understand that kids often think that their world is the same world as everyone else's. Like I didn't realize it was kind of normal to, you know, maybe not have food and get power cut off and the phone would be cut off and all that stuff. I just thought those are things that was happening to everyone. And so then I kind of came up through that. I had experiences that were pretty horrific. Like I've had more trauma than some, less than many, but, you know, just domestic violence and things like that from partners of my mum's and stuff like that, and her own mental health struggles. And then, when I was 16, I got kicked out of high school, and all of the local high schools had such a bad reputation that none of them would take me. And so it was a really interesting journey for me that I kind of was going to have to finish my high school years in TAFE, but then this last school, I kind of gave me a chance and ignored the advice of my old school and not take me. It's always quite funny because I went from being like one of the cool kids, which essentially was because of all of the antisocial behaviour I was up to, because my mum just didn't have eyes on me, to going to this high school, and then instead of arguing with teachers, they just respected me, and so I respected them and got along with them, and I didn't submit something, just got a 0, but they didn't change how they were with me. They didn't punish me or they just said, you just get a 0 and then we'll try and figure out how you can submit it next time. And I'd never experienced that. Like I'd always experienced hostility and yeah, and then I kind of went to uni, and it's funny for anyone who knows pop culture parenting. I never did well academically. Like I still don't really do well academically, but in my final year of my undergraduate science degree, I was talking about congenital cataracts. I had to do a talk about congenital cataracts, and ironically, I used the movie Daredevil with Ben Affleck, which is quite a bad movie.
The new show is not bad though.
Yeah, the show's great, but this movie, and it was essentially about trying to explain neuroplasticity in these kids that don't see light through their eyes because of congenital cataracts will never then see if the surgery is not done quickly enough, and also they don't have better hearing or better smell or anything like that. That's not how our brains work. But it's quite funny. It was the first time I ever got a good grade on something. And it was the first like positive academic experience I'd had, which was like third year uni. And then I just started leaning into doing stuff that was based on like storytelling and presentations and all those things. And then I went on and I was going to do child psychiatry, and just had some negative experiences on psych wards. And just I was dual training, looking into that as being, there's a few people in Australia that are pediatricians and child psychiatrists, but after a 6-month run on the psych ward at one of the big hospitals, I just realized that wasn't for me. I wanted to catch these kids earlier. So I became a developmental pediatrician, and now I'm really lucky that I help run a national program in this. I get to train a handful of up and coming developmental pediatricians every year, meet these kids, do research in this area, all this stuff. And yeah, and then my PhD's in that space and all of those things. So yeah, my story's been a really interesting one. I think one of the things that people like hearing about my story is that I was told many times along my journey that I wouldn't amount to anything by like educators, other adults. I was doing a talk actually down in Mornington at the end of last year, and I was like, oh, this is right around the house, right around the corner from my girlfriend's in high school when I was like 15, my girlfriend's house that she was growing up in. And I remember her mum pulling me aside and being like, you're never to speak to my daughter again. You're never going to amount to anything. And I was like, that's quite interesting to think about, like decades later being back, you know, around the corner talking to people about how to support their kids when I just wasn't getting that. And I think a lot of my work is driven by that drive for kids to have different experiences to the one that I've had. And I often think, I don't know if you're like this, James, but I often think that I'm like looking for myself in clinic a bit.
Oh, totally. It's such a fascinating trajectory, and it's so personal for you. And that really comes through, I think, in the way you communicate your messages and the way you relate to your families. And it just feels so grounded in the kind of human aspect of what it is I think you are trying to do and we're trying to do as clinicians. And I really love that. And yeah, look, I relate to it because as you might have heard me speak on the imperfects around my bullying story, and that's something I've chosen to reveal in the way that you've chosen to reveal what you've just described to us now, as a way of, I think, connecting and trying to help our clients feel like, you know, what they're going through, firstly, is normal, but also that there's a sense of being able to relate to something. So we're not trying to sit from an ivory tower, but actually to connect as humans.
Yeah, it's a really important point, and we train clinicians in this as well, of this relational practice idea that we're actually trying to form partnerships. And I think that a lot of that is missing in the clinical spaces, which I think is why so many people are turning to like influencers and stuff, because they can be like, I'm just like you, and here, if you pay me $80, I'll give you the 3 quick fixes to solve all the problems in your life. And you can kind of, you and I can look at that professionally and go, that's snake oil, but people are just searching for answers. And so they need to connect first. And I think, yeah, this kind of very outdated model of like, I'm the expert and, you know, you come and see me and I'll fix everything if you listen to me, and if you don't, it's your fault.
With the caveat, of course, we have to be incredibly judicious about personal disclosure and how and when we use it, just to put that on the table. But I think in general, it can be such a powerful and useful tool.
Definitely. It's funny. We talk about in that relational practice work that there's like qualities and skills that we try and help people understand, like empathy and, you know, the power of silence and active listening and all these things. And self-disclosure is one of them. And it's one that I've never struggled with. Like I think that so much of me is in my clinic room. And I think that I try and I realize that my risk is that I self-disclose too much. And so I have to be able to pump the brakes a bit on that. But I think that, yeah, you're right. Everyone's personal about it. Like I only talk about my story. I try and be really respectful of everyone else's that's been a part of that story and never kind of name any people and things like that. But yeah, a lot of especially the teenage boys that I meet when they hear my story, I think it does help us relate to each other.
Hi everyone, so sorry for the interruption. We decided we didn't want to run ads in this season. We didn't want to interrupt the episodes, but here we are interrupting you anyway with a few quick favours to ask.
We love putting this show together for you, but we do need your help. So simple things, if you could jump onto Apple or Spotify right now and leave us a review, that would be amazing. Preferably 5 stars if you think we deserve it.
Next up is, if you wouldn't mind please sharing it with anyone you think would like this. I think that's the fastest way we're going to be able to grow. So anyone you think would benefit from this kind of messaging, please do share it with them.
And lastly, if you're on Instagram or YouTube and could subscribe and follow, that would be incredible. These are the things that the algorithm needs in order for us to grow our podcast.
We're really excited about what we're doing here and we want to make it sustainable. So if you believe in our mission and are willing to support us in these ways, we'd greatly appreciate it.
So rate, share and follow, and you'll be doing us a massive favour. We've got lots of exciting ideas coming up, but we do need your help. Thank you, everybody.
Back to the episode.
And with regards to what you were saying around, seeking, exploration or understanding of self or even healing. Can you tell us a bit more about that in terms of what has your professional life done in terms of helping heal your wounded child?
Yeah, I think it's helped. I don't think it's completely healed it. I suspect, yeah, it's funny because I speak to my therapist about this, like about how I've kind of made peace with those wounds being a part of me for the rest of my life. And my therapist is like, no, that's not, I don't accept that. And it's quite a funny thing. Like you and I know this professionally of coping mechanisms like that and how deep-seated they can be and how ingrained they can be. And I think the hard thing for me is I'm a developmental pediatrician. I'm not an adult mental health specialist. So I have so much professional hope and optimism about all the kids, including the kids in their 20s that I meet. But I kind of just wish that I'd had help sooner. Like, I've even had like people without naming them threaten that they wish, and they mean this as a punishment and a threat, they wish they'd taken me to see a psychologist. And I'm like, yeah, I wish you had too. Like, and it just shows that it wasn't their fault. They thought that that was a punishment, not a way to help me. And so, yeah, I think it helps me. It definitely helps me heal those wounds. I think for a big part of me, which shows my insecurity, is that it makes me feel like I'm good enough because I'm contributing. Like I'm proving all those people wrong that are still in my head, or like, you'll never amount to anything, you're a bad kid. I'm kind of proving them wrong. Like, and there's an almost unhealthy component to that. I've just finished 16 years of full-time uni. And so, that's I don't think they're thinking about it anymore, but I clearly am, and just, have I truly healed that if I'm still like out there trying to prove myself? So yeah, it's a hard thing, but it 100% helps. Like it helps me understand obviously my own experience and how it's impacted me, but also just it helps me feel like I'm changing that story for other kids, which is really meaningful for me.
I think that was a big part for me when I first started as a child psychologist. I thought I could help some kids not go through the bullying experience that I did. I think that was a starting point. And yeah, probably is for a lot of clinicians. I have no doubt that it's quite a personal decision.
Definitely, and bullying's such an interesting one because it kind of goes back to my point before about like there's this huge, like biggest podcasts in the world influencers that are like, bullying builds resilience. I was bullied, I got into martial arts. My whole identity was shaped by that. And now I'm this multimillionaire, has the biggest podcast in the world. And like, it's probably not that hard to guess what I'm talking about, but I'm like, dads are listening to that going, maybe it's not that bad that my kid's getting bullied. Maybe it'll toughen you up. But that's not what resilience is. That's not what it's born from. And like, those are unhealthy coping mechanisms that those people develop, which is the opposite of resilience.
Agreed.
And bullying's a really good example as well, because there's heaps of evidence about how to prevent it or how to identify it early and stop it, but schools really struggle to access that resource.
I think it's getting better. It's getting better as our language around it improves, and our at least that's my observation. I think it's better than it was in the 80s anyway.
Yeah, it is interesting, and this is getting a bit too much in the weeds, but our school attendance rates are actually getting worse. So I think, and we are having more kids starting school with developmental risk and vulnerability. So I think by some lens, yes, things are getting better than back then. But it's actually quite nice to hear you not. I don't know about you. I get a lot of people who romanticize when we grew up, and they're like, back in the day, things were so much better and everyone turned out okay. And you're like, actually, no, the adult mental illness rate is just shy of 50%. So it wasn't this fairy tale we're all skipping around in the playground together, sharing lollies. It was parents just didn't have eyes on us, and they just weren't aware of the stuff that was happening, because it was the latchkey era, which
for better or
turns
worse,
out wasn't great for lots of us.
Yeah, that's right.
It's been a common experience on this podcast. We're hearing stories of that era and the lack of supervision, the as you said, the free roaming, lack of parental observation. It hasn't always helped kids.
Yeah, and this idea that teenagers just become moody and shut us out, and that's just a normal. It's like, no, it's not. That's not. That's it's such a vulnerable part of them seeking and exploring their identity that we actually need to be really connected with them, not just go, oh, I don't know what's going on with them, but that's just normal. It's that's hugely vulnerable. So yeah, I think that's what's really cool about what you guys are doing as well, is just exploring those experiences for people so that we can all learn and do a bit better with the kids that are coming up now.
Well, I love how you're doing that, breaking down these assumptions and helping people see things from a different perspective and a different light that might, just help illuminate some different options and choices that we have in our relationships.
Yeah, because I think you're right. If you just have choices and an understanding, then you can think about which bits serve you, try them out and see if that helps. One of the biggest bits of evidence is just reflective practice, thinking about how am I actually going. And I think so many people don't really do that, where I know the more stressed I am, the more busy I make myself, because I don't have to sit and think with those thoughts. I can just be like, oh, I'm so busy. And then I'm always on my phone, and I tell myself I'm moderating the socials, but it's very easy to step sideways from moderating our social media platforms to just passively being engaged with TikTok.
Sure.
But there's a reason I'm doing that. It's not just stop doing it. It's you're stressed and you're trying to cope.
I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind going back slightly here. I'm trying to join the dots between what you described, which is, pretty traumatic upbringing and being told again and again that you won't amount to anything, to this successful person I'm seeing. I understand you've just said that there was a bit of negative motivation to prove people wrong, but at what point along the way did you develop that reflective process? How much of that internal resilience did you naturally have, or did you have to learn that slowly along the way?
Yeah, I think if I'm being really honest, I'm actually not that resilient. I think my coping mechanism is that you both probably heard of the John Henryism of just push harder, prove them wrong, go harder at something. And I've had a lot of luck along the way. I don't ever want to sound like any of my success is just because I worked hard, but my coping mechanism has not been to reflect and think they don't decide who I am and how I feel about myself. It's been to prove them wrong. And that's something that I still grapple with today. I see every opportunity as a chance to reach more people, but also as a way to keep proving that. And I'm so vulnerable and insecure in myself that I'm worried I'm going to stuff it up and that they'll be right. And I would love to be at a point where I was at peace with that and just be like, oh, that's actually okay though. And I'm quite protected and have big walls up around relationships and who I trust and all that stuff. I've just had a lot of people, not a lot, but I've had people who were meant to unconditionally love me harm me. So that's a lot of kids that I meet in clinic that understandably are threat seeking and have their guard up everywhere.
I mean, just even hearing you share that, Billy, it's like, it's so powerful to have someone who is, I'll use the word again, renowned clinician who's sharing your wisdom, just share such vulnerability as well. I think it's so validating and so humanizing and normalizing of these sort of experiences for people.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard for me to even say it without becoming emotional. Like I remember I was talking about masculinity on the Imperfects, and I remember like there was a comment from some guy that was just patronizing me and being really derogatory that I'm not a man and all this stuff. And it was such a hard thing to read, because I was like, partially because I'm like, other people are reading that and seeing someone, and like, I remember I even looked at his profile picture and he's got like a guy in a headlock, and he's like got these really like awful slogans on his t-shirt and his hat and all that stuff. And I was just like, I was trying to create a safe space for other people to feel like that, and this guy's proven that it's not safe. Like, and yeah, that's the memory I have of that now, is that someone attacked me when I did that, and that just reinforces
really
and proves, just reinforces and proves that I'm right. That it's not safe.
We were incredibly lucky to be raised by a beautiful dad who showed us a model of masculinity that was very gentle and reflective and thoughtful and modern, I think, in terms of how masculinity is kind of evolving and the way we're thinking about it now. So it's interesting as you say that, because, a comment from someone like that towards me, I think because of the model we were shown, I'd probably just deflect that really easily to say, I have no interest in being that kind of man. I'm quite proud of being a gentle man. And I would hope that for you, but I also understand, like, you weren't raised with those models and you didn't experience that necessarily. So you might have a gap there in terms of what, your version of safe masculinity looks like.
Definitely. And I think that's so much of my work is trying to build that in the kids that I get to meet, so they don't feel like that. But, and it's not the parents like you that I'm worried about. It's the ones that are just repeating the same cycle they grew up in, thinking I'm fine. And they're driving around really hostile in the world, I got in a lot of fights growing up, and even in my 20s. Like, I remember the first day that I ever stepped onto a paediatric ward, like 2 decades ago, I had 2 black eyes. Like, I'm not kidding. I had 2 black eyes the first time I ever stepped on the paediatric ward at Tweed Hospital.
Wow. Because
it was a Monday, and on Saturday night, I'd been jumped by like 5 guys because I danced with someone, and one of the guys wasn't happy about it. Ended up like dating that amazing woman for like a year. But yeah, I remember walking onto the pediatric ward, and I've still got a photo of myself, because I like had these massive black eyes, and I was really lucky that nothing worse happened. I started boxing the week after that, because that was my way to cope with it. It was like I just got so sick of being jumped so many times that I was like, go and learn how to box, instead of actually addressing, what was the insecurity that it was building in me. I almost reinforced it. And I think unfortunately, that's a lot of men, they kind of will go and learn, MMA, or they'll go and lift weights, or they'll sit in ice baths and, or
So what did boxing do for you then? How has it helped or hindered?
It's hindered in a way that, like, I think when I finished my first part of my training, we all went away, maybe 20 doctors of us, and I was like really into skating, and I was skating, bombing this steep driveway, and I snapped my wrist, like a compound fracture of my radius and ulna, and my mum had just died, and so I was in like just a really bad way, like trying to destroy myself and the world. And so when I snapped my wrist, boxing was like the only thing that was keeping me kind of sane, like not in a healthy way. And I was boxing like everything. I was just doing it 5-6 times a week, and like really obsessed with it, and just partying way too much. I was a hospital cleaner every Saturday and Sunday. Like,
how old are you at this point?
I would have been my like mid-20s, like, or maybe towards late 20s, or around mid-20s. And I remember I got rushed to surgery, like hours of surgery trying to put my wrist back together again. And when I came out of it, the first thing I asked was, can I still box? And they were like, no. he'd never be able to box again. And I haven't been able to box again. And I kind of went through this grief process with it because it was the only, even though it was unhealthy, it was the only way that I was coping with all my grief, and it was the only way I was coping with all my anger and resentment and insecurity. And I've just now, I still exercise 6 days a week. I just don't box. And it's like in quite an unhealthy way. Like anyone who actually knew anything about fitness would be like, yeah, your body needs rest. But I'm like, no, this is, I only have one gear of like going really hard at stuff. And it's, yeah, it kind of comes a lot from those years of like just bury yourself in things to cope.
You can relate to this one, Nick, right? With your exercise?
Yes, it's therapy for me as well. And fitness advice, be damned.
And what do you do?
I look, I do whatever's going to keep my mind working. So that's a combination of running, lifting, jumping, lots of different things. But it helps me immensely. Yeah, grounds me.
And can you take a break from it, Nick? Like, are you able to?
No, I find that when I do take a break, the negative effects start rolling in. It's like a baseline. So I just consider it part of my my health. It's like basic hygiene. The physical health is now there for my mental health, and yeah, I'm at peace with it. I know it about myself, and so I'm really committed and regular with it. Having a dog helps.
Yeah, tell me about it. I've got a border collie. I think my partner's currently running it at 5 o'clock in the morning in the dark.
So as we're chatting, we're realizing it's actually you two who have more in common than me, really. You've got a self-regulation thing going on in common with one another.
It'd be interesting because I don't know if you're like this, Nick, but it'd be interesting to hear what James thinks about it, where I justify like how badly I sleep, how poor my diet is, and how much like wine I have by like at least I'm exercising every day.
There's probably some truth to that, isn't there? Even if the balance might be a little unhealthy.
Totally, but it's just funny how we set these like lines in the sand that we're like, as long as I'm exercising every day, it's okay. Like, instead of actually, how am I going?
Yeah.
I can sit in clinic and say, how's this kid actually going? But for me, I have these kind of arbitrary measures that probably aren't that helpful.
One observation, Billy, as you're talking, and I have no doubt you do this quite differently with your clients, because when you're, and in the way you communicate, you're so generous in your read of other people and your whole premise that there's no such thing as a bad kid, and there's always a context and a way to understand where this quote unquote bad behavior comes from. But if I may, when you talk about yourself, you do so, in my opinion, with quite a critical lens and are quite harsh. Can you tell us about that distinction?
Yeah, I mean, like, I know why I'm doing that too. It's this interesting thing that, like, to have, I'm happy to share that I see a therapist and like have many times, and sometimes in like acute crisis, like can't get through the rest of today. And I guess it's one of the hard things is that knowing what the therapist is doing, and being like, you're taking that approach, you're using schema therapy or whatever. And it is a funny thing to know why I do that, because I can't, the reason I'm so critical is because I can't touch the little kid. I can't touch little Billy because it's too risky. It's too risky to open that up. And I just don't know if that makes it better or worse. Like, like it obviously really helps me in clinic to have that personal experience, to see, often these like violent, big teenagers as little kids that are stuck and little kids that are afraid. But it's just too hard for me to touch it. Like, I can't. Well, I don't mean that as like I'm not happy to talk about it. I'm more than happy to talk about it because hopefully it helps other people. But what I mean it as is like, I just don't have the sense of security in myself that I can do that. And it's an interesting thing, especially I think a lot of us go like, trauma happens in childhood and we carry it. But there's actually quite a lot of us that trauma has continued into adult life. And I think we make the mistake sometimes of being like, these kids just had bad trauma decades ago and we need to help them heal for that. But actually a lot of us, including kids in clinic, are being actively traumatized, And I think I often say that to the fellows. I'm like, no, this child's still experiencing trauma. That yet this awful thing happened 2 years ago, but they're actually still being traumatized. Complex trauma is ongoing for this kid. and that's what's happened for me. Like, it's continued into my adult life. Like, my childhood trauma has reached out to me and found me as recently as last year. Like, and that is that, you know this professionally, James, like that idea of the hypervigilant person who's like looking for threats and risk everywhere. When they're right, it reinforces that unhealthy behavior and says, actually, yeah, the world isn't safe. You should be looking over your shoulder the whole time.
That's it. And you can't just switch that off. You can't intellectualize your way out of that profound experience. It's very integrated.
Yeah, that's how I've kept myself safe. Like, that's how, so that's actually worked. Like, others might look and say that's quite dysfunctional. But actually, there really is no dysfunctional behavior, because it's what our body and mind has decided is what we need to do. So we can look objectively and be, it's really bad that person's self-harming. But actually, that's their coping mechanism, that their mind and their body has said this is the only way to get through this experience. And if we don't actually validate that first and then help them build out healthier ways, then you're actually just unintentionally reinforcing and saying, your body's wrong, your mind is wrong, I'm right. And that's, especially for kids, that's really confusing to be like, you're telling me I shouldn't be anxious here? Okay. Everything in my body is telling me that I'm unsafe. And you know that through professional work, we actually need to help kids understand what those signals are in their bodies, that they're valid, and then how to actually have a healthy way of processing that and help seeking and having safety and communicating their needs and all those things.
Hearing the vulnerability in you even now as you're telling us this story, and again, thanks for doing that, because I can imagine it's not always easy to go into this headspace, but you're on the front line of this every day. Like, when you're talking about being all sort of re-traumatized or re-experiencing some of this stuff and chasing that kind of healing, it just makes it all the more fascinating, your chosen profession, because you could have done something that completely avoided this, but you're right in it and you're talking about it directly or indirectly all the time.
Yeah, I think it's funny, like sometimes in the media I'll say it's like such a privilege, and I think people think maybe that I'm just saying that because it sounds good, or maybe that, oh, what a generous person. Like, I sit in clinic, like, to be 100%, and this is not disclosing anything about patients, but I sit in clinic and cry with kids, and a lot of people will say that's professionally not appropriate, but yeah, I can remember the last kid I cried in a room with, and he was a kid that had spent over a decade in foster care, and I think I said this in other media, but yeah, he was a violent, scared kid who a psychiatrist told him that he was a psychopath and that he was never going to be any better. And I just wept with him in that room, and like, yeah, and I'll carry for the rest of my life him like shaking my hand at the end of all of that, not being able to look me in the eye and just saying, like, you've helped me more than anyone else ever has. Like, far out. Like, I get paid well, but that's like, yeah, that's like one of the highlights of my life, holding that space with that kid. And like, so yeah, that's just, that's how I do it. That's how I've learned to do it. It's how I've chosen to do it. Other people, I get the privilege of like helping them explore that if that's how they want to learn how to do it. But I do that for me. Like, I do that because it is an exceptional privilege to be able to, when that kid walks through the door, I'm like, I think I can help him. And then I get the experience of helping him.
I just get such a strong image here, though. Like, when you say it's really hard for you to access little Billy or go near little Billy, I think you are doing it all the time. And it's quite interesting. Yeah. It's like you're very drawn to him, even if it's hard to, in some way, to connect directly. Indirectly, you seem to be very close to him.
Definitely. And I'm at risk of, if I haven't already done it already, of making this just a therapy session for myself. But I think if I genuinely reflect, I don't think I'm any healthier than I was a decade ago. I've just gotten better at putting up walls and actually being okay with them existing. Like, I have very few people in my life that I genuinely trust. Because of the work that I do and the reach that it gets, I will have people that come up and say thank you, and it's just amazing. Like, and they're like, sorry for bothering you, I just wanted to say thanks. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, getting people doing that, I wish everyone got to experience that. But I don't have a lot of trust in myself being genuinely vulnerable. I can be vulnerable talking on this podcast. I can be vulnerable sitting in clinic because I know they're safe spaces. I know you guys will be considerate and compassionate with me and all those things. I know, like in clinic, I'm an expert, for want of a better word. Like that is a really safe space with me.
Of course.
But trusting a friend or someone else, is way too risky for me. And even my own personal reflection on like sharing that, like, and that's my experience in therapy. It's sitting there and being like, yeah, I've made peace with it, which is not great. Like, and I can sit here in the moment and be like, man, I hope he's right and I hope I'm wrong. But I'm also actually okay with it because, my biggest thing, which is interesting for both of you, is I've got 3 little kids watching me. So, that's probably my biggest motivator is like, how do I role model the healthiest version of myself for those kids knowing that they're watching me? I'm pretty good with them, like because of probably my work and my understanding, I'm pretty good at like, making sure that I'm sensitive and responsive to them. But I probably the biggest bit of work I need to do is on my role modeling.
Yeah.
And because I don't have any family for them to connect with, my family is the handful of people that I trust, and I speak about them as family. They are uncles and aunties to my kids. We talk about them all the time when they're not around. We prioritize over everything just getting around those people because, as you know, James, that's the evidence. Like non-parental adults take a genuine interest in kids, protect them against adversity. And so, I've supplemented my lack of family that can come around them with, people that I trust, but it's a thing that I really struggle with, like emerging into future relationships because of my experience. But I have really made it quite a therapy session about me.
It's great.
I mean, we asked the questions and just, I want to let you know, like, I hate hearing that a negative comment has gotten to you. And I just want to echo what I already know is thousands of PCP listeners who adore what you do. But, personally as a dad, like I've got 2 boys and listening to the way that you've discussed masculinity and the ways that you've encouraged people to express sensitivity and emotional intelligence and guide young men in particular, being a father of boys has just been so moving and important to me. And the fact that, hearing your backstory and the work that you've done, it's such a beautiful synergy. And I don't really have a question here, but I just, off the back of hearing that emotion, I just want to express gratitude for what you've done and let you know it's meant a lot to me and I know a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. And that's, to be honest, that's like why I do it, because people say that it helps them. And I'm like, I get to do that in my work and get this feedback that's quite intimate with kids' experience changing. But yeah, it's this really nice thing that I can also seem to connect and help with, some people out there through the other work that I do. So yeah, it's really cool. But the hard thing is that you're probably the person that needs the least help. I don't mean that to minimize your challenges, but I mean it's the angry, aggressive man that's like threatening someone on a social media post that is probably the person I'm the most worried about for their own mental health, their own risk. Like intimate partner violence in this country sits at 25%. I've got 2 daughters. If that guy is raising a son, then this is not my opinion. The evidence shows us that he's more likely to harm others and he's more likely to harm himself because of the way that he's being raised and the culture he's in, the beliefs and behaviours that he's observing, hearing about, being directed towards. And that terrifies me.
So you have a sort of frontline approach in a sense of this is not just a choice, but necessary work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm sure you're both the same. Like my kids are just, I worry, I really struggle to just be like, they'll be fine. And a lot of that's my own experience and I need to pick apart like how my actual kids going and how much am I like just thinking about my own childhood and worried about them falling into the same traps that I did. But yeah, that's what I really worry about. That's the biggest driver that motivates me, like is, what's the world going to be like for my kids when I'm not there because they're in school, but also when I'm not here anymore to talk to them about this stuff. Like I had such a close relationship with my mum. Like she was my sanctuary. She was my confidant. Like she was the person that I went to for advice. And yeah, I was in my early 20s, but I needed her for way longer than I had her, you know? And so even like I have recurring nightmares about not being around for my kids because of that, you know, because that's the fear. So it's really interesting. Like it's, you know, so much of what I'm doing is driven by fear and anxiety and trauma and all of those things. And sometimes, you know, I wish that I could just be like, sweet, I'll just cruise through life. I'll have balance, you know, like I work crazy hours, then mum works even crazy hours. Like my partner, she's a surgeon and she, you know, I think she's done 3 14-hour shifts in the last week. Like, and so, yeah, but I kind of wish I could just be like, I'll just drop back and I'll have more balance and I'll just spend time with them and all this stuff. But I just have this real drive. And I'm also a bit miserable when I'm like that, you know, like I need stuff to be burying myself in and like driving at. So it's just lucky that it's kind of something that seems to help people
productive as well. I'm curious to ask you about the inner critic. This is something that Nick and I talk a fair bit about, and the genesis of that. You know, it's my observation that some of the most successful people by all metrics, we talked about your kind of criticism of yourself before. Do you ever get relief from that inner voice that's kind of, you know, negative, critical, hard on yourself while you are achieving these obviously great things?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for me, like I've had people like tell me that I'm really arrogant. And so I think the inner critic is often trying to push back against that, like, and make sure that arrogance is in check. So I think that's partially where some of the relief comes from. Yeah, and I think it's such a well-trodden path for me. You know, it was a narrative around me, and then it became a narrative internally. And so it's, once again, it's quite a safe experience for me to be like, I don't celebrate any victories. Like we're doing a live tour and I'm like, great, it went okay, that's good. I'm not proud of myself. I'm just like, I didn't stuff it up.
Yeah.
You know? And every time I do, like even this podcast or other media I do, or anything, even our own podcast, like I write the first book, and people seem to like it, and it was relief. It wasn't like a sense of pride.
It's it's a pain avoidance lens, isn't it? Rather than a kind of pleasure seeking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that's why, like, I often find myself, I remember initially I'd scan like everything and be like, is that, you know, I'd be like, the positive feedback was great, but I was actually just hoping there was nothing negative there. You know, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes complete sense.
So can I ask then, because I share the negative critic, the negative inner voice. You obviously have all the expertise to reframe it, and yet it still bubbles up for you. So can you talk to me about, like, this is obviously a learned behavior, a learned response of safety from early on. How much do you believe in the neuroplasticity of us to be able to change, or do you accept that is always going to be your disposition?
Definitely. Like, so I know physiologically the reason that's happening, and that's because my like emotional sensitivity and my temperament and my experience and my attachment and all those things means that I'm very prone to being flooded and overwhelmed by emotions that obviously aren't always rational. And so I know where that comes from me. The hardest thing is for me, it's one of the things I like about myself is that I'm emotionally sensitive and that I have these big experiences. Like I will often like cry reading something that has come in about PCP. Like,
yeah, you make me cry on my runs all the time.
Yeah, like I read that stuff and I'm like, yeah, I've read it 30 times before I read it on air. Like every single thing that comes through, I read, and I've read it 30 times before I read it, and I still cry, and I've cried every 30 times. And like, but it's actually this beautiful experience for me. Like it's this positive thing. So the hard thing for me is,
can you give an example of what you mean? Like what kind of thing would you read and would trigger that emotion?
Oh, I mean, it's hard when it just sounds like praise, which once again is my inner critic coming out, but it sounds hard to be on a podcast and be like, this parent said that we've changed their life or something like that. But
well, that I can tell you as a listener, that happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know one that recently got me was that I was sitting there and I was reading this article, and it was about people that work in palliative care, and it was about like how often when people are dying, they see people that are in the room that aren't really there. And they were saying like it's often loved ones they haven't seen in a long time and all that stuff. And it was this beautiful article in the ABC, and it was essentially like how they were saying, don't tell them they're not there. Just let them in those final moments, like because of their brain chemistry and all that stuff, let them have that experience. And I was kind of like, oh man, I hope that I have that experience. Like I hope I get to see my mum. And yeah, and I remember like just crying, bawling my eyes out reading that. And it was like this beautiful thing. And so that's an example, but I would probably at least every couple of days get something that comes through to us that does that to me, and I embrace it. I like have that emotional experience because once again, it's like crying with the, huge 18-year-old in clinic. It's one of the richest parts of my life. Like, and so is joy with my kids and my partner and all that stuff. But yeah, so I can sit there and be like, I know theoretically and professionally that my emotional sensitivity is too much and that I need to do the work on like cognitive restructuring or thinking about, what's lying underneath and, challenging that inner critic and thinking about little Billy and all that stuff. But that's just such a big, risky bit of work for me.
Yeah.
And it's way easier for me to help someone else do it than to help myself. Like that's...
Yeah, I would just imagine you're doing some pretty profound work with little Billy anyway. That's what I think. And I think you're doing it all the time. But it's interesting hearing you say like that you're tying the being emotionally rich and connected to an inner critic. Like I, as someone who doesn't have a strong inner critic, I would listen to that and say, you can have one and not the other. Like you can still be an emotionally rich, sensitive, thoughtful, compassionate person, but you don't have to beat yourself up all the time.
Totally, but that's my insecurity.
Yeah, maybe perhaps it's trauma and a range of things that you've already described.
Sorry, my insecurity because of trauma.
Yeah, and it's just the framework that's imposed, and I just it taps into something that I desperately want for the people I work with, which is freedom from the learned habits and even you mentioned it yourself. There's a kind of attachment to it, but it's the worst kind of friend because it's robbing you of perhaps freedom, joy, rest that might be possible, where you can have that as well as still be this incredibly motivated, driven individual on your own terms. And I think there's a balance in there somewhere that it sounds like it's at the moment slightly out of reach.
Yeah, and I think it's woven so much through, my daily practices. We were talking about exercise, like that's just how I start my day and I go really hard at that. And then my days are just always really full. In the evenings I work most of the time, like I try and have rich experiences with my kids in amongst all of that. But it's, it is a really interesting thing. And as you know, those like coping mechanisms like avoidance is another one, which I'm obviously doing too, which is that's just a pattern of behavior that I've been doing for a very long time that has probably limited some of my joy and rest and all those things you've talked about, but it's also kept me safe.
Yeah,
like it's been predictable.
I get it.
And this too, like a lot of these kids in classrooms that are kicking off, it's predictable, so it's safe.
I wouldn't mind just asking one more question there before we move on. So to Nick's point about can that change? Do you have a sense of optimism or hope that through the work you're doing, that at some point there could be a shift for you in that inner critic, or do you think it's with you for the long term?
Yeah, I would hope that the inner critic, I can get a little bit better at managing them. I think the emotional sensitivity will always be a part of who I am. I think I'll get a little bit better at, say, reading criticisms, but I think they'll always sting me a bit. I think that, I've had the privilege of working with people that are really big in media, and I've spoken to them about it, and they're like, we just don't read anything. And I'm like, but how do you know if what you're doing could be better or not? And they're like, it's not worth it. And I understand that's quite a healthy mechanism, but I'm like, I'm kind of wired to try and get every bit of information I can and pick it all up and all of those things. And so, and I think part of that as well is like that insecurity around trauma as well, is just like I've missed so many things until they really hurt me. And so yeah, but I hope that I would get better. I think one of the things that probably a lot of people do that I do as well is like, once I get the next thing sorted, then it'll be fine. And I don't celebrate. I've never gone to a graduation. I've got like, degrees and masters and a PhD and everything. I've never gone to any of it.
Yeah, that's really telling, isn't it? Given how vulnerable you've been, I'll just share a reflection of myself. Like, I don't have the inner critic like you and Nick, but I think my vulnerabilities as a young person did give me a people-pleasing, modality. So when you're talking about, the capacity of those that are securely very content within themselves to not read criticism, there's no way I could do that, because of that part of my brain, which is an interesting one, to be on the lookout for whether people approve or disapprove of what I'm doing. Won't necessarily change what I think of myself, because I actually have quite a positive inner critic, but I'm on the lookout for people who might be a threat or disapprove. I think that probably taps into some of that for me.
Yeah, like, and you'll have a healthy version of that, but I think there is an unhealthy other end of the extreme that is like, I don't care what anyone else thinks of me.
Right.
It's like, we all know, like, I feel like I'm kind of bashing men a bit, but we all know a lot of men that are like that. They just roll around the world and they just take what they want. They're like, I don't care what anyone thinks of me.
Yes.
And the problem is a lot of that's being role modeled on a very big scale to the kids that are coming up now.
Yeah, interesting.
Like, that person literally just says, I grab and take whatever I want, and he's one of the most powerful people in the world. That must be okay then. And it's like, how do we role model that? I think, you both do it beautifully as healthy versions of masculinity for your kids, but where are the bigger versions of that?
Well, just to broaden this a little, did you see the Louis Theroux documentary Into the Manosphere recently?
I haven't, which is quite funny because I do a lot of commentary in that space, and I'm just finished writing a second book about that topic. But I don't know how you navigate this, James. I'd love to know selfishly. I try and like only read the literature. Like, a lot of people will send me stuff, whether it's a book or something like that. And because I'm like so busy in my head, I want the only stuff that I know to be the evidence. And I don't have the capacity to be like, I'll watch this and know that it's not actually evidence. I'm not saying that I actually haven't seen the Louis Theroux thing, but yeah, there's so much pop culture, there's so much just opinion in this space that I actually intentionally kind of avoided a bit to just stay in the evidence.
Which is great, because I think that's such a great grounding and trust point for your clients and people you work with. But I do find that ironic, given you've got a pop culture parenting podcast.
Totally, but I'm doing that for evidence as well, because you will know this. Like, there is evidence that stuff really influenced our beliefs.
Yeah,
we know that when we portray violence in a heroic way, it is more likely that those people will have those beliefs and behaviors themselves. So when like Bruce Willis saves the day by beating up the bad guys, people are watching it going like, oh, that's okay. Like, and if they're got stable relationships at home, a secure environment and all that stuff, then it's not damaging. But there's a lot of kids out there that don't have the counterpoint, and they're like, this is the only influence I've got. So I intentionally use those to challenge. The hardest thing for me is that a lot of the movies that I love, like, we're trying to reach dads, but I'm just like, man, I love Thelma and Louise. It's just such a beautiful movie. And I love Ripley. Like, Aliens, most men love that movie, but I think they don't deeply think about, a bit of an example is like, which, is probably not that on the radar of international listeners, but Mr. In Between. Like, I don't know if you saw that. It's this beautiful series. Like, he's a really broken little boy, but I think a lot of men idolize him, and they're like, I just wish I walked around like that. And it's like, they don't, if you relate to that guy and like look up to him and wish you were like him, then you've got some work to do. Like, you've got to, like, whereas, I remember sitting around with a bunch of guys and they were all like just saying how great he was. And this woman was like, he's awful. Like, he's a monster. Like, he's insecure and he's violent.
Yeah.
And, it's destroyed his life because he has this romantic, healthy relationship come and leave because of it. And like, so I intentionally use those cultural references to challenge them and say, like I can do it. But co-regulation is just beautifully demonstrated in the original Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Like it's, this traumatized kid, the person who's meant to be looking after them when the T-Rex leaves and runs away, and she's traumatized, she's breathing, and she's like, he left me. And Sam Neill looks at her and says, that's not what I'm going to do. It's like, how phenomenal is that writing? Like, and if you understand mental health first aid and co-regulation, you can be like, that's who we all want to be.
Yeah.
Like,
and of course, I mean, I know you know this, but just to say it out loud, the way you use these stories that we all shared the experience of watching and then drawing psychological truths from them just makes it so easy to connect to that and understand it and relate to it. It's a beautiful lens that you're using, the pop culture one, even if it doesn't sound like you respect pop culture as much as I hoped you would from what you've just described.
I love it. Don't get me wrong. Like I love pop culture. Like I could, one of the things that I do to dissociate is like, just watch one of the Transformer movies. Even though I've seen them 100 times, they're absolute trash.
Yeah.
It's just like, I can totally switch and it's been, talk about a first world problem, pop culture parenting is beautiful, but it's made watching movies feel like a bit of a chore.
It feels like homework, right?
But my real secret weapon is Nick. Like Nick is who does PCP
likewise
with me because, well, he's just, of course, you also have an amazing Nick. But Nick is like the listener sitting next to me, and there's probably people that can relate to me because of my upbringing and my trauma and all that stuff. But people really relate to him. They're just like, especially a lot of dads. Like he loves his footy. He's just like, does it matter? Like, why is this stuff important? And then we talk about it, and then they can come along on that journey with him as well. Whereas, the hard thing is I could talk about any topic for hours, but I think people just find it less helpful when it's not a conversation, when it's not woven through like pop culture stuff and like connecting with it. And yeah, it's wonderful. But the same, you're doing that through like this idea of storytelling and unpacking our experiences. And I think it's a beautiful thing because I think we unfairly get put in categories of like, oh, you've got lived experience or you're an expert. And actually, as you have already said, a lot of us that have expertise and stuff also have personal experience with some things that help guide us in this too. So, yeah, I think it's just how do we do this better and continually evolve the way that we all support each other? Because the thing that I'm terrified about is that, people I think are becoming more isolated and they are turning to sources that aren't evidence-based and they are like picking up and copying behaviors that are really unhealthy, like from masculinity or whatever you think it is that's going on.
Well, in fairness to Louis Theroux's doco, it's not evidence-based, but he's also not preaching. It's very much just a shining a light on a reality that I wasn't very aware of. We haven't spoken about this, James, but I got to say, I watched it and then I spoke to my 14 and 17-year-old and was just, they knew every one of these toxic male influences, which was just devastating for me to learn about. But it was a real reality check. And they're like, yes, every single one of us at our school, like all the 14-year-olds knew every one of these guys. But my 14-year-old did give an interesting insight, actually. He said, we all watch them ironically. Like no one thinks that these are good guys. No one even agrees. This was his perspective. No one agrees with what they say. We watch it and we just laugh at these idiots. And yet that's just it's being shared endlessly. And of course, there will be some that buy into the messaging.
Many, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, the research is it's not some, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So the reason your son can do that is you. Like you're the reason because he's got a healthier version at home that he has an intimate connection with. And he goes, that's not how my dad is with my mum. Like that's not how my dad is with the person at the coffee shop. Like, so... But yeah, so many people who don't have that, that's like, and this is why like I speak in the media about like this idea of reducing criminal age and like, these kids need to be locked up. Like firstly, the reoffending rate is huge. So this is actually making our societies less safe by locking them up. But also these are little kids that missed out on connection and a sense of belonging in school settings or whatever because of lots of different reasons. But they found their home in these people. These people have said, I will help you, I'll guide you, I'll give you power, I'll give you influence, I'll give you what you want. And that's all those kids want. So if we can't give a healthier version than that, then we're lost, we're doomed. But I actually think we can. But it's, I think a lot of it's glorified. We think about like, some of the athletes that we praise, and they, cheat on their wives and do all these awful things. And we're like, oh yeah, but he's really good at footy. And so the problem is the kids are watching that and being like, well, he's won a premiership, so it's actually okay that he treats people like that. And it's like, why do we accept that? Like, it is wild to think someone's good at kicking a ball so they can do all these awful things and we'll give them a pass. Like, it's...
Yeah. So what do you do, Billy, then? You're talking about the rising tide, I guess, of this negative messaging that you're trying to push against or teach in the midst of. Are you optimistic about these good messages and the science and the stuff we want to help people understand, or do you feel a bit swamped by what's going on culturally?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful question. I think my answer to that has so much of me in it as well, of like, I see it as a challenge that I want to face that will help me keep going. But I also, like, there are way more people that are doing amazing stuff, way more amazing stuff than me, that are actually coalface, like that are in schools, in the police force, in child protection, like in juvenile detention centres. And like, that's my thing, that I wish I was getting more to them. And I wish I was like, when I got asked to write the second book, I actually convinced Penguin to donate 1,200 copies to Australian Childhood Foundation, which is like the one of the leading trauma service providers nationally. And the exciting stuff about me is combining powers with groups like that, and also the media. We're really lucky that we have partnerships with people that are really have a lot of reach and influence. And as we're growing that out, we're just getting so much opportunity to go into spaces and actually share that evidence. So those are the two things that give me hope. The opportunity is huge. The challenge is huge, but the opportunity is huge. And there's just so much cool stuff happening. Like I could give you 12 organizations now that we're currently doing stuff with, that I just hear about what they're doing and I'm like, far out, that is phenomenal. Like Man Cave's one of them. Man Cave is just like these beautiful humans that I meet in that org that just help us and want to collaborate with us. Is just amazing. And that gives me hope, because I think like those influences like Andrew Tate or whatever, I think collectively we can actually do better. And we can actually, instead of telling these kids they're bad kids and they need to be locked up, or, machete bans or whatever it is, actually going, how about we bring these kids into the village, and how about we look after them and care for them and show them what unconditional love and support is. And then, just like your kids, Nick, they'll look at it and know it's wrong. They won't be fooled by it. And I think that's what gives me so much hope, is being a small part of that solution is like a really, really cool thing that will obviously also help me heal my own wounds with it. So that's where my optimism comes from.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Yeah, beautifully said indeed. And I think I would love you to just tap into one more question for me, and that is your deep compassion for others. I don't know the extent of what you went through as a kid, obviously, but where does it come from? How do we understand this deep compassion you have, not just for your family, but everyone? It seems like you've got this desire to help people heal. Where does that come from for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I know I'm a bit of a broken record, but I actually think it comes from quite a selfish place. Like I remember I was on a podcast once and they're like, you're so non-judgmental. And I was like, I'm really judgmental. I get angry at like someone cutting traffic. I get angry at like cyclists blowing through the school kids that have got a green person walking across. Like I get angry at the person that doesn't pick up after their dog. Like I'm really judgmental like that. And I expect people to be better than that. And I also, like all of us, I'm like, I do nothing wrong. I'm perfect. It's all these people that are like, not complying with the social contract that we have of just treating each other well and being respectful and looking after each other. But I think that I have this clinical training that helps me understand kids. Like I'm never like that with kids. Like kids and, even people in their 20s and stuff, I'm like, you're still learning who you are. And I find it very easy to be compassionate and not judgmental of them. And same with parents and same with educators. Like sometimes I'll say stuff and I'll be like, every parent is trying their best or every educator is doing work. And sometimes people will make comments on those posts that like, oh, you haven't met my parents, or my dad traumatized me, or I had an awful teacher at school. And I'm like, yeah, but I think that there's so many of us, like even I get to meet families that have had their kids removed from them, and they love their kids as much as I do. They're just holding so much more weight and so much more trauma without the capacity and resources that I have. And I'm finding it hard. So it's easy for me to look at those people and go, and that's not to take away and dismiss the awful experience that kid has had. But yeah, and I can remember sitting in clinic, with one mum who was doing shared visitations and everything and all that. And I just got to know her, and I remember saying like, God, you're doing an amazing job. And she just burst into tears and was like, no one's ever taught me that. No one's ever said that I'm trying and I'm doing well. And that's like, what a silly thing to have not heard with a parent that's experienced their own childhood trauma and is trying to break a cycle and at the moment failing at it. But still coming.
I know Nick will agree with this, but it's very, very moving hearing you talk about your mission, and it so clearly comes from your heart and in a very, very personal way. And I just thank you for the work you're doing, and yeah, just keep going. You're doing
same. I feel the same about what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
like it's so cool. It's like how cool is it that you have found this way to connect with people in public that maybe can never afford or find the time or the understanding to come and see someone like you in clinic, but they can learn here. Like it's what a safe space to create that can actually change lives for people. Like it's, I hope you both have this real sense of pride with it, because it's, you also, most people don't know all the work that goes into it.
For sure.
I intimately know that too. So
but the thing I think we can probably agree on is like, I practiced in the clinic room for so long, and I found myself drawn to some simple truths that were helpful and, making a difference individually. And I was like, I really would like more people to hear these. So we're hoping that through the podcast, a few of those ideas do get spread far and wide in the same way that you're trying to.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's beautiful. And yeah, I mean, thanks for letting me be a part of it, because it's really cool to collaborate with you both on this.
It's a real privilege. Yeah. And thank you for your time today. I know you're a busy, busy man.
Yeah, it's been an honor.
Well,
it's great to
I think everyone is. So you guys are too. So I've really loved it as well.
All right. Thanks, Billy.
Thanks, guys.
You're a Good Kid is produced by Nick and James Van Kuylenberg, recorded at Whitehouse Sound in Melbourne, Australia, with artwork by Dirty Puppet.
We acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast was recorded, and recognise their continuing connection to lands, waters and community. We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, and to the elders past, present and emerging. If anything in this podcast has raised concerns related to mental health, please contact your health professional, or if urgent, call Lifeline on 13 11 14.